There's something that I learned about lately that actually created a bit of a breakthrough for me in my business, but I think it'll be helpful for you if you're experiencing any kind of stuckness or spinning where you can't seem to move through something. For me, it was business. And I want to talk about this because I never got how trauma response can look in your real life. Trauma responses, stress responses are so there's four F's, the four main F's: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And the one I'm going to talk to you today about is freeze. And it's actually not the way that we think because we're not wild animals. We don't just freeze like deer in the headlights. Freeze can show up actually in different ways. And I didn't realize I was actually stuck in a trauma response until a few days ago when I had a session with my therapist and I said, "What is this?" And she's like, "You're frozen. It's freeze. It's a trauma response." So if this can relate to you in whatever area of your life, I'm going to give my personal experience. I'm not a therapist, but I think it's helpful to hear these stories because the way it shows up can be so varied. And I want to encourage you to check out a few online doctor personalities who have a lot of really great information. Dr. Nicole LaPera, Dr. Ramani, and Dr. Ingrid Clayton are three, and I'll link them up below. And one of the things that I learned recently from Dr. Nicole LaPera was something called functional freeze. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the way it showed up for me, for the last 3 months, have been doing a lot of work, but not making many sales and not actually putting out a program that has been ready. It's actually been ready for 3 months, but I haven't been able to really sell it or put it out to the world. And if you're being coached by a business coach, or you're in some sort of mentor program where they're talking to you about mindset, they might say things like, you need to put yourself out there. You need to get used to hearing no and being rejected. And yes, that's all true. However, no amount of being held accountable or pushing or encouragement or any of that was actually going to get me through this. And so I spent 3 months in this coaching program and doing lots of work. Like, I did 10 interviews and I transcribed the interviews and I analyzed the transcripts and I wrote sales copy and I wrote emails and I made it look beautiful. And I did a lot of work. It wasn't like I was sitting around doing nothing. However, it wasn't getting me anywhere. And until I had this session with my therapist, and it was actually the acknowledgement of the trauma response freeze that was such a light bulb for me and allowed me to recognize what it is. It's not that you need to work on your mindset. If this is you and you have had a traumatic relationship, traumatic experience, if you're suffering from PTSD, so many of us are, if you're just stressed. And for me, it's chronic PTSD resulting from years and years and years of abuse from an organization, professional organization, air quotes. Because it was a business, I use that term lightly, but because it was a business and I was making money in my business related to this organization, a lot of my triggers are in business. A lot of my triggers come up with sales, and it's difficult because I'm trying to rebuild my business, that certain things are really easy and fine and other things are really triggering. So what I did was I listed all of those things for my therapist, and I made a list. It was like, okay, here's what I can do easily. And some of those things are doing client work, writing, doing the interviews, talking to people about their business, creating social media content for, I have a spice company that I work for, and I love that. It's so fun. I make, just fun reels and things. I have absolutely no problem doing any of that. Reading, learning, all of that is really, I have no issue with. But the trouble was coming up when it comes to putting an offer out to the world. So it's like, here's something I have to offer you. And even if it wasn't a one-on-one conversation, but it's putting it out in an email, putting it out on a webinar, just putting it out anywhere. And So all of the things related to that bring up these triggers that came from the traumatic events that happened in this cult and leaving the cult. So you can check out other videos for more elaborate explanation of that, not to go into that, but just so that you can relate to whatever's going on. Maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's something from your childhood, unresolved trauma of any kind. And what I realized is I want to share this because so many of us are survivors trying to recreate our lives, and part of that is making money. And even if you don't have your own business, it's like going back to work. Some of those things might be really triggering. Just socializing, for me, being with other moms in kid events is not easy. Like having to, like, that forced socialization. um bit agoraphobic at the moment, and it's not something that comes easily. Meeting new people, making new friends, having to socialize with people that you wouldn't really, other than the fact that your kids are friends, and it's like, okay, now I have to talk to these people. All of that can be really challenging. So in this video, I want to talk about freeze and how that can show up. So if you were a wild animal and, let's say you're eating out in the field and there's a predator and you freeze, right? Because it's like a stress response. And you can understand how your brain does that, right? It's like my therapist said it, the way she described it. She's like, okay, so caveman days. If someone is shooting an arrow at you, they want to kill you. That's it. Like there was no subtlety. There's no like, nowadays there's a lot of complexity. And our brains can view some of these things as arrows that actually aren't, or daggers. It's like a comment on a YouTube video, or a client saying, I can't afford that, or your prices are too high, or maybe you're dating and someone doesn't want to go on another date with you. Like these are not actual arrows, but because of the complex worlds we live in, our brain may see them as an attack. And so because our brain is interpreting it as an attack, we respond to it as if we are threatened, and our brain wants to keep us safe. And so these 4 F's, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, are 4 ways that you may react to a perceived threat. Whether or not that threat is real is not the point. Is that your brain is perceiving it and your body is perceiving it as a threat. So in this case, this business coaching group that I'm in, which I think for a non-trauma survivor, all the recommendations are really working for them, and they're going out and they have all accepted this 100 no challenge where you're supposed to go out and put your offer out there 100 times and get 100 no's. And I'm like, I cannot think of a worse fate, worse than death. Like that to me is so, I heard that and I was just like, nope, I'm not doing that. And that's okay, and I'm having grace with myself and where I'm at. And I still do want to get through this though. And I want to work on it. So I'm going to give you now some suggestions on how to work through any of these trauma responses, because what it is the first, recognizing if you are in a trauma response. And if it's freeze, it may not look like you're just stuck doing nothing. It may look like you're spinning your wheels. Okay. And you're stuck, not moving forward. So you're rehashing, overthinking, second guessing, feeling shame for not being able to do things that you used to be able to do. It's no longer easy for you to do these things. You feel like you should be able to do them. Other people are able to do them, but you can't. So many people are stuck in what Nicole LePera calls a functional freeze, shaming themselves for not doing enough or just being overwhelmed and exhausted. In reality, our body is attempting to protect us. Okay, so here's a list of how she describes it. And then I'll talk about how it showed up for me, because it wasn't exactly like this. In functional freeze, our body is highly immobilized. Muscles are tense, voice is monotone, we're apathetic. Survival is the only focus, no motivation, high procrastination, thoughts of doom or crisis. We want to sleep all the time. We might self-isolate, struggle to connect, losing chunks of time, feel like we're sleeping through life on autopilot. So also it can feel over time, this freeze response can be misidentified as depression, and it can look a lot like depression because, okay, so you're feeling like life is pointless. You feel completely numb, shut down, silent treatment, complete avoidance, hiding out from the world, procrastination again, inability to make even small decisions, endless social media scrolling or binge TV watching. So just those mindless activities, confusion over what's real or unreal or actually happening. And for me, I had some of that, but I think I innately am very productive and I enjoy working. So it was like this push pull almost, like I would get into the groove of working, but I would stop when it got to those triggers of selling and rejection. And so then I would just like spin in another direction, like keeping busy on most days. Some days just would go into that, like life is pointless, like real depressive state where it was just like, why am I even bothering? Like I'm not getting anywhere. This isn't getting me anywhere. I should just, stop. I should just give up. Like, that's those kind of conversations, right? And so freeze is a coping mechanism. And you adopt a coping mechanism because it's your best way at getting through or surviving. It's not very effective at being productive or living a happy, fulfilling life, but it is a survival mechanism. So from Nicole LePera again, she lists some ways to slowly bring yourself out of freeze. And I would recommend if you're resonating with any of this, that you seek out a trauma-informed therapist, because it's really hard to deal with these things on our own. And sometimes it's just that simple, not simple, but like could be one conversation where it gives you that aha moment like I had, where you go, oh my gosh, that's what's going on. It's not that I need to go do a bunch of practice making sales pitches or something. Like I'm in a trauma response. It's a very different thing and you have to treat it very differently. So here's how to slowly bring yourself out of freeze. And the key here is small daily practices. This isn't something that you are going to do one big massive change and get really motivated about. This is something that you implement like little bits at a time so that it actually holds and stays, and that it's something that it's like a way of living differently, really. And one of the things with this is that you can feel really dissociated, like that feeling of what's real and what's not real, or losing chunks of time. That's a dissociated thing. And I spent a lot of time in the cult that I was in being dissociated, because when you're being traumatized, that's one of the ways you can cope with it, is just like leaving your body, like you're not there. So coming back and being, present in your body, there's small daily practices that can really help you with that. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you try these, just notice it might make a bigger difference than you think. So daily breath work, there's something called box breathing where you like count in, I think it's 3 or 4 breaths, 1, 2, 3, and hold it for 3, and then out for 3, maybe 4, however long. But it's like a box. So in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Deep belly breaths, or just sighing. Grounding, so walking, barefoot on the ground. I love to go to the beach and walk in the sand. It's really cold and rainy here now, so that's a bit difficult. So, where can you ground yourself? Maybe it's a bathtub, or maybe it's just wrapping yourself in a nice warm blanket with a hot water bottle and doing some breath work. Sympathetic energy release. So that's where you actually do like kicking, screaming into a pillow, shaking, dancing, like getting that response, that sympathetic activation and energy out of your body, crying. And all of this is something that you want to do every day. One of the things in the cult space, they say, cult recovery space, is you need to cry it out or sweat it out every day. And some days I do both. So hopefully this gives you something to think about with being stuck. If you're spinning, if you're feeling like you're procrastinating, you can't seem to break through or move forward, you might be in a freeze response or a functional freeze. Those are some ideas. You can check out the 3 therapists that I have linked in the show notes here, or find yourself a trauma informed therapist and don't be afraid to ask them questions about their experience and how experienced they are with trauma victims, because it's actually pretty important that they are aware of trauma responses and how to deal with it. Something else that I'm trying, I haven't done it yet, is called EMDR. I'll let you know how it goes. I haven't done it yet, but have a session scheduled. And it's one of the things that, the way I understand it, is it helps you to move memories into long-term memory so that you don't constantly have those, like a PTSD response where you're reliving trauma over and over, so that it can just live as a memory that happened in the past and you don't have to kind of like rehash it. But I'll let you know how that goes. All right. See you next time.